Around a year ago, I made a video about an up-and-coming mod called Axiom that promised to make Minecraft building faster, more accessible, and more intuitive. 1 year later, Axiom has successfully shaken up the building scene and established itself as an essential tool for any serious Minecraft builder. Now, the developers are back with another mod that I think will once again revolutionize the entire Minecraft scene. This is Flashback. This mod adds a new user interface to the game designed for grabbing beautiful cinematic shots. And there are 3 major reasons why I think this mod will be used by every Minecraft content creator you watch within the next year. And the first is the professional user interface. Just like Axiom did for building in Minecraft, Flashback adds an entire menu system on top of the game that really functions more like a software than a typical mod. Later in the video, we'll be chatting with the developers, Mulberry and Soko, about their goals for the mod.
I'm very happy with Axiom's development. I started working on it.
But for now, let's jump right in. Alright, when you open up a replay, right away you're gonna see a bunch of windows. And one thing that's really cool is you can actually undock these and drag them around to make any configuration you want. So you can literally just adjust this around your workflow for whatever kind of content you're making. So right up top on this menu bar, we have the export button, but I will say this mod is very early in development right now, so we might see a lot more tabs up here in the future. Like with Axiom, we have one for our windows, one for changing keybinds, and even this help menu with the Discord and the documentation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of similar stuff eventually make its way into Flashback as well. It might even be there by the time you're watching this video. As far as the actual export menu, we'll get into this a little bit later, but just to get you excited, yes, that does say record audio, and yes, it is what you're thinking. But let's not get carried away yet. Over here we have the visuals window, which has a ton of insanely useful features, but again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think the best place to start is down here on the timeline, which is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say professional user interface. If you've ever used editing software like Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, this should feel very familiar. So this timeline shows the full length of your replay, and you can just scrub through with this playhead here to jump around in time. Over here we have this add element button. So these are basically all the things that you can currently keyframe or animate. So for example, we can create a camera and put down a keyframe, and we're actually gonna see our camera appear here in our scene. Okay, then if we go ahead and put down another camera keyframe later in the timeline here, we're gonna see a line between them, and if you look really closely, you'll actually see that it's got little dashes here. See, I can drag this keyframe here and they get closer together. Each one of these represents a game tick, which is what this timeline is based off of. See, when I drag a keyframe here, it goes up and down in ticks. All right, so now we have 2 camera keyframes. We can press play and see our shot. Beautiful. But let's say we want this to be slow motion instead. We can hit add element and select speed here. And then if we make a keyframe, we get this slider here where we can adjust our speed. So let's make one just at 1, normal speed. But then we can make another keyframe over here and slow this way down. So now we've actually got a speed ramp where the motion starts normal and gets slower and slower as the shot progresses. Super cool stuff, right?
I'm excited for Flashback because it's going to give me a reason to try some new things in my videos. I've fallen into such a comfort zone with doing kind of the same stuff for several years, and with learning all the new features coming with Flashback, I feel like it's the perfect time to try some new stuff.
And there's lots of other things we can keyframe too. For example, let's say that instead of slow motion, we're doing a super fast time lapse of digging dirt in my flat world, but maybe the sun keeps going up and down. You know, the shot just looks messy. You can actually create an element for time of day, and we can animate a beautiful sunset to slowly play out while I mine all this dirt. All right, so once you've got all your keyframes, there's a bunch of cool things we can do with them on our timeline. So we can right click them to change the values, and we can even do stuff like choose the easing, which can really make a huge difference for some of the shots. Like, just look at the difference between the same shot with linear motion versus with a nice ease in. If you make a mistake on your timeline, you can use Control Z to undo or Control Y to redo. And if Minecraft randomly crashes, the amazing thing is that just like Axiom, Flashback actually saves your undo history between sessions. It's so sick, like I can't even do that with Adobe. So you can also select multiple keyframes at once and drag them around like this. And it even has one of my favorite features from Adobe After Effects where you can hold Alt and drag a selection of keyframes to keep the relative spacing between them. There's a ton of other intuitive controls that should feel super familiar to those experienced with editing. If we hit the I and the O on our keyboard, we can set our in and out points, which is how we choose which section of the replay we actually want to export. And we can use the left and right arrow keys to jump forward or back 1 tick in the timeline. Or you can use up and down arrow keys to jump between keyframes, which is really useful.
I've spent a lot of time rendering replays, and there's a lot of things that can be changed with Flashback. The ability to change time of day is huge, as well as more accurate player movement. The UI is way cleaner too. Being able to change keyframe interpolation and move multiple keyframes in a timeline sounds like a small thing, but it is a huge pain in replay mod.
A lot of these shortcuts and tools are very reminiscent of industry standard softwares like Premiere and Blender, which makes them feel so intuitive because if you're a fan of the channel, you know we love our Blender shots. My editor and I actually studied animation together in university, and we both work together on a lot of projects we do on this channel. So the potential for a robust, professional tool for making Minecraft movie magic has me so inspired. I love that my job allows me to combine combine my passions together. And lately, my passion for animation and my love of cozy games has really collided ever since I started playing Disney Dreamlight Valley. I was so excited to discover a relaxing game like this that has all my favorite Disney and Pixar characters I grew up with. The very first thing I did in the game was bring Wally back to the valley because he's my absolute favorite. He's even behind me every time I live stream. This game is available now in most of the places you can buy games. I picked it up on Steam and I've already buried way too many hours into it. It's an extremely chill game to help me unwind after a long day in the dirt mines of my SUPERFLAT world. And I'll be busy for a while because there's so much content and it's getting free updates regularly. I am definitely a collector when it comes to these games, and I was practically drooling when I saw how many different things there are to unlock and collect. All the different game systems are really well fleshed out, and learning to cook, craft, and decorate felt super intuitive. The theme of the game really resonated with me. You find yourself revisiting the place you used to play as a kid and work to help bring all of your old friends back and revitalize the valley. I love the theme of holding on to your imagination as you grow up because I feel like I've tried to do that in my SUPERFLAT world, and I always try to inspire others to do the same. So get your imagination ready and follow the link in the description or the pinned comment to purchase Disney Dreamlight Valley. And thank you so much to Gameloft for sponsoring this video. Okay, back to the mod, and I just want to say, if user interfaces like this one intimidate you, you're not alone. I think a lot of people can be put off by big scary menus with a lot of options, but I think there are already mods out there that are super accessible to learn with zero editing skills. For example, Replay Mod has a super simple UI that's based on the look of Minecraft, so it's really easy to learn. But that actually brings me to the second reason I think Flashback is gonna really change the game, and that is its distinctiveness. There are so many features in this mod that just don't really have alternatives. Probably the best comparison to make is Replay Mod, which is a cinematic mod I currently use for all my videos, as well as pretty much every other content creator I know. And the mods do have some similarities. For example, the process of recording a replay functions basically the same. With Flashback Mod, you can also use commands to set your replay if you prefer, but Flashback has a lot of differences that make it stand out. As I mentioned, Replay Mod's UI is super accessible, which is great, but sticking to Minecraft's UI design principles does mean that it's harder to fit in so many options and toggles like Flashback has. Replay Mod is also very focused on backwards compatibility. The developers actually keep the mod updated for older versions of the game, which if you have any experience with coding or developing, you know that is a gargantuan task, and one I seriously commend them for, by the way. There are so many content creators using older versions of the game who rely on that backwards compatibility. But on the other hand, by choosing to only remain updated for the current Minecraft version, the developers of Flashback will be able to focus their time on adding lots of new features.
The developers came helping instantly with any problem I had. They're really nice, professional, and incredibly skilled.
As I've seen with Axiom, Mulberry is really good at making mods that are efficient and user-friendly.
Another big difference between the two mods is their overall focus. While you can do a lot with either mod, Replay Mod is especially great for time lapses. Replay Mod uses a two-timeline system where the in-game time is separated from the timing of your shot. This works really well for time lapses and makes setting them up just a few clicks. But it does have some disadvantages as well. It can get a bit confusing at times, and it presents other technical problems when it comes to keyframing other elements like we can do in Flashback. Flashback Mod is much more focused on getting third-person cinematic camera shots than time lapses. You can make an element for a time warp, but it's a little bit tricky. Basically, you enter in the time you want the action to take place over, and the playhead will slow down or speed up to play out the action over that amount of time. So essentially, this timeline shouldn't be thought about in seconds, but always in game ticks. And doing a time warp is like increasing the tick speed. While this can be a bit more confusing for time lapses especially, I think it does have a lot of advantages. Once you think about the timeline in terms of game ticks, it's very easy to understand and keyframe multiple things. Like you can actually keyframe your FOV to create amazing dolly zooms, which are such a cool and trippy effect. You can also keyframe camera shake, allowing you to create some incredibly realistic handheld looking footage. Replay Mod and Flashback are also different from a technical standpoint. Replay Mod essentially works by playing all packets sent to the client in order from when you first join the world, meaning if you have an 8-hour recording, the mod is forced to play through all 8 hours. This can cause some big loading times when trying to jump around in the timeline, especially when moving backwards. In contrast, Flashback Mod is capable of taking snapshots of the world at any point in time and then playing back from that, allowing you to navigate the timeline much more freely. This can potentially save a lot of time when working with huge projects, as Minecraft grinders like yours truly are often doing. One final key difference between the mods is that Flashback allows for multiple cameras to be set up within the same scene. This allows you to plan out some super dynamic sequences. You can also set up a bunch of different cameras for the same scene and add them one at a time to the export queue. The camera on the top of the element stack will always get priority, so I can just drag these around to switch between shots. At the end of the day, I don't think Flashback is going to replace Replay Mod for me, because both have very different goals and therefore different advantages for various use cases. But the new features that Flashback will bring to the table have potential to really make Minecraft content that much more dynamic. There are just so many features that really set this mod apart from all the other cinematic mods I've used. You can create a camera that orbits around a single point super easily, and as I teased earlier, creator, exporting sound from your shots is a huge deal. No longer will you have to spend painstaking hours recording and syncing game audio to your replays. And that brings me to the third reason I think this mod is going to be a go-to for any Minecraft content creator so soon, and that is its rapid development. The orbiting camera and sound exporting features I just mentioned, they didn't exist days before the time of writing this, and new features are popping up on Mulberry's Twitter all the time. Odds are by the time this video comes out, the mod will have even more features. We haven't even touched this entire visuals tab, which is jam-packed with some insanely useful tools for content creation. You have complete control of all the visual elements on the screen. We can turn chat off and on, we can hide that pesky boss bar, or choose whether to include other various UI elements. We have control over all the different world elements, blocks, entities, players, particles. Plus, you can easily set up a green screen by removing the skybox and blocks. And this override section can be super useful. Fiddling around with your fog settings within the game can be so painful, but Flashback gives you precise control, so you can shoot spooky shots to your heart's content. You can also override your FOV with this little slider and the time of day. Just like with Axiom, you can control-click any slider to input a value directly. By the way, you can increase your fly speed by holding down left-click and scrolling the mouse wheel. But one of my favorite features of all has to be these overlays. Both this rule of thirds guide and this center guide here are essential for getting the perfectly aesthetic compositions. Plus, the ability to change the aspect ratio can be a lifesaver for content creators working in the vertical or square formats. Visualizing multiple resolutions on the fly is going to be such a time saver for a multi-format creator like myself.
It also looks like you'll soon be able to click on entities and get additional options like making them glow or overriding their skin and name tag.
And there are more features coming every single day. I mean, you can literally go to Mulberry's Twitch stream and see him implementing code for hours in real time. I've watched him integrate features that myself and other content creators have asked for time and time again, both with Axiom and now with Flashback. In fact, in the 1 year since I made my Axiom video, it really has transformed into an everyday tool for pro builders.
Quite simply, Axiom helped me speed things up by a lot. I haven't figured out all the tools yet, but for the ones I needed, it was game-changing. Being able to visualize things before applying them or saving blueprints and copy-paste them so easily helped me quadruple the speed that I built things.
Axiom has allowed me to go much more in-depth with my planning than I was really ever able to before. In the past year of using Axiom, I've created some of the largest and most detailed builds I've made in the previous 12 years I've played the game. I've gotten to the point where I'm using Axiom for pretty much every single build I do now.
I was really skeptical in the beginning. I just didn't need it, considering I've been doing relatively small projects and I've been using Word Edit for almost 10 years now. And that was enough at that point. I didn't really think learning a new tool was going to be worth it until I was forced to use it to place around 5,000 houses for a project. That's when I started using Axiom.
I get asked a lot if I've used Axiom, and I do use it, but I don't really rely on it much. Don't get me wrong, there's some great tools in there, but I already had an established workflow before it came out, so I don't really see much of a point in uprooting that. I'm sure I'm going to learn more about it in the future, and that opinion might change, but other than the builder utilities like far reach and replace mode, I don't really use it much. If I could go back in time, back when I first started, and I hadn't learned any of the other mods, I bet I would have started with Axiom, just because it's so much more user-friendly than a lot of the other building tools. But I also look at it like this. If I didn't rely on server-only plugins like Voxel Sniper and Archeon, I probably would have just stayed in single player. Because I was forced to join multiplayer servers for those tools, I met other builders, and my skill grew a lot quicker because I wasn't just in an echo chamber.
I had people telling me how this wasn't looking like real building, especially with the display entities, even though they're still vanilla. But in reality, I just want to create art in the game, and I'm trying to optimize the process so I can save as much time as possible. And Axiom allowed me to do just that. I feel really good about this mod. I really didn't expect it to be this efficient, and I've been using it for months now. I really can't wait for more features.
I wanted to talk to Mulberry and Soko a bit more about their goals for the mod. First of all, how do you guys feel about how Axiom has developed over the past year?
I'm very happy with Axiom's development. I started working on it around 3 years ago, just as a small private tool for Soko here. I very much enjoyed turning it into something that both professionals and casual builders can take advantage of.
As Mole said, Axiom was originally created as a private mod for our project, Gauntlet, which is an MMO roguelike server that we've been steadily developing over the same course of time. The project really required some pretty robust tools that didn't exist at the time, and now that we've made those tools available to the community, we're seeing people create builds beyond anything I could have ever imagined possible. I'm extremely proud of how far we've come, and working directly with these tools on a project like Gauntlet has given us first-hand experience with what people truly need, and I'm very excited to showcase the rest of what we've developed to a broader audience soon.
And who would you say is the target audience for Flashback mod?
It's really hard to say because our expected target audience for Axiom was way smaller than what we have now, and it really pleases me to see an upcoming generation of young aspiring builders use Axiom, and I hope that we see something similar for Flashback.
Primarily content creators who just want to to incorporate some third-person shots into their videos. It's still quite early, but already a lot of the features you can see are kind of heading in this direction, right?
What are some of the long-term goals for the mod?
I think it'd be really cool to see Flashback become a part of content creators' workflows in a way where we start seeing more and more high-quality cinematics make their way into videos.
While I think that we have a good list of features planned for the near future, I think that this is where the community steps in and helps us. They've helped us make Axiom what it is today, and we look forward to the features that they'll suggest for Flashback.
Lately, we've seen some beloved developers leaving the community, and I wanted to quickly say how important it is to support the developers that hold up the entire community, like you two and the developers of Replay Mod. How can the community give back to developers like you?
It's unfortunate, but understandable that some developers are leaving the community. Mod developers have a lot of expectations placed on them, but at the same time, there's a great aversion to financially supporting developers. There's real people behind these projects, and financial support doesn't just benefit the developer, but it also actually benefits the community, who can continue to get new features and updates.
Probably the most important thing you can do to support developers is simply to be respectful. If a developer is doing it as a hobby, like Matica Dev Massa, and they want to quit because it's no longer enjoyable, please respect that decision. The developer wants to accept donations or otherwise get paid for their work. Please respect that decision. If a developer doesn't want to support Forge or Fabric or Minecraft 1.8, please respect that. It might seem simple, but it really does go a long way.
I can't wait to see where this mod goes. If you want to try it for yourself, it's available now. Join the Flashback Discord in the description for more info. And huge shout out to Mulberry and Soko for everything they do. Thanks for watching.